We're joined by Linda Burney. She's the Shadow Minister for Families and Social Services. She's also the Shadow Minister for Indigenous Australians. She is an ALP MP in Sydney's South. Linda Burney, good afternoon.
Hi, Raph. How are you?
Why do you think domestic violence spikes around the Melbourne Cup and Grand Finals?
Well, it does spike around the Grand Final in Melbourne and the Melbourne Cup. Of course, here in New South Wales, we see a spike around the State of Origin Rugby League football game. It's a combination of things. Like you just said, it's not just about alcohol. That's usually a contributing factor. But, the Melbourne Cup is a public holiday, so people probably start drinking today, not tomorrow. We have the combination of often financial difficulties, and in some cases the heat. Maybe not many of them, but the heat is a contributor as well. Lots of people in the house.
Do you think we're doing enough, Linda Burney? The government, federal government, Scott Morrison's government, say they're spending more than the federal government's ever spent on domestic violence. Is that a significant step forward?
Well, they are saying that, of course, and we know that from 1-800 Respect, there's a 17% increase in demand for services when the Melbourne Cup was on. That was certainly the figure in 2017 and 2018 as well. So you've got to ask that question, but the point that you've made is that what the Morrison government has invested is the fourth domestic violence action plan, which of course is very important, but there has not been a substantial increase at all in domestic violence services. And of course, state governments have a responsibility too, and the Victorian state government is a shining light, I have to say, nationally, when it comes to addressing the issues around domestic and family violence.
The Prime Minister is very vocal in saying how significant his investment has been.
Yes, he is. I have responsibility from a shadow perspective for a very large part of this portfolio, and the increase has been minimal, and it's certainly not been where I believe the services are required. I'm talking about frontline services. Yes, we need advocacy groups. Yes, we need investment in research. All of those things are really important, but the investment really needs to be frontline and directly to particularly women and families who are dealing with extremely difficult circumstances. And a lot of the people that are in these circumstances are marginalised in lots of other ways,
yes.
be it, living in poor socioeconomic, but not always conditions. There's a whole range of factors.
A whole lot of other risk factors. But do you think the government's heart is in this fight, the federal government?
Yes, I think the heart is in the fight from any government, but pretty state government if it wasn't. But the really crucial thing in my mind, Raph, is to listen to the voices that are directly affected or directly know about these issues. It's not about what we as politicians think. It's actually about people who are dealing with this issue day in, day out, either as someone that's experienced domestic violence or is experiencing, or someone that works in the sector. They know where the needs are, and we know that there are thousands and thousands of people every evening that are living in dangerous situations that do not get or cannot get into a service.
A reminder, the Respect number is 1-800 737 732, so 1-800 Respect. Linda Burney is with us. She's the Shadow Minister for Families and Social Services. Our phone number, if you want to join in the conversation, different number is 1300 222 774. Linda Burney, can I ask you about the Prime Minister last week? He said he wants to create new laws to stop free speech if it's about protesters targeting some companies, especially companies that are targeted over their role on climate change. This is the Prime Minister on what he calls progressivism.
I hear a lot about progressivism at the moment. Sounds like a lovely word. You can cuddle up to it and give you a nice warm glow. But I tell you what it means in hard political reality. Those who claim this title want to tell you where to live, what job you can have, what you can say and what you can think, and tax you more for the privilege of all of those instructions that are directed to you.
That's the Prime Minister last week, Linda Burney. Do you agree with him on progressivism?
I think being progressive is a very good thing. I consider myself to be a progressive, and I'm not sure what the Prime Minister was actually trying to achieve. Certainly Labor, and I've noticed that our spokesperson in this area said that we would look at the legislation. I think the Prime Minister was referring to some protests that had affected businesses, and not necessarily progressivism in a broader sense, and certainly Labor will look at that. But there is nothing wrong with the notion of being progressive. If we didn't have progressive thinking, then I think we would be a much smaller community.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Linda Burney, she's Shadow Minister for Indigenous Australians, Families and Social Services.